As for an intervention with Mr. Jones, I would like to see if I can get him sitting on the edge of the bed. So I'd have him sit on the edge of the bed, and I'd want him to work at an intensity somewhere between 9 to 11 on the Borg scale, or 11 to 13. So research supports both, but however, in the 9 to 11 range, it kind of stays more so in the 50 to 60% of his max heart rate, which is where I would ultimately want to keep him working at. So I'd feel a little bit safer keeping it at the 9 to 11 Borg scale. I'd have him communicate, point to the numbers if he can, and if not, I can always look at his heart rate as well to see if he's within those levels too. Ultimately, it would be somewhere between 87 to 105 for his heart rate if we're staying between 50 to 60% of his max heart rate. And then, looking at the Borg scale a few times, 10, 11 by 10, then, you get 110. So, or 9 times 10, it's somewhere between 90 to 110 that we want to stay within. So I kind of like the idea of using the 9 to 11 on the Borg. Ultimately, I want to use the overload principle for cardiovascular fitness. I want to be able to stress him enough to where he is going to increase his cardiovascular fitness and aerobic capacity and endurance. However, I want to keep in mind the fact that he's also fighting acute infection, and his anxiety level is probably going to be increased by getting up and moving. So overall, I just want to make sure I'm keeping those things in mind and knowing that pretty much any type of movement could be more or stress his cardiovascular system more than it currently has been since he's been on bed rest. As for progression, so I have him sitting on the edge of the bed, he's tolerating it. I could have him do some marches in place. If he's tolerating that, I could decrease my assistance to him. I could have him start to reach, because reaching is going to stress the heart more than the legs are. So, I could have him do some reaching activities to work on limits of stability a little bit. And if he's tolerating all of that, then, maybe I'll have him try and get up and stand. It just depends on how his, if he's remaining stable. As for regression, so he's not tolerating it, I could have him, use his arms for support. I could give him a little bit more support, or I could just have him sit back in bed at 75 degrees height, so he's still in an anti-gravity position, and have him do maybe some heel slides, move the arms around in that position. And then, if he's not tolerating that again, I can go down to 30 degrees, maybe go try some heel slides there, or just do some bed mobility. Ultimately, when I'm regressing him, although it is regressing, I still feel like I could do functional mobility activities that are still going to meet the goals that we have for him currently. So even if he's not able to sit on the edge of bed, I have him sit in the anti-gravity position, or I have him, do some bed mobility, one or the other, still able to meet the goals, still getting him, to overload his, cardiovascular system. As for signs and symptoms that I want to look for, I want to make sure his heart rate's not going below 40. I want to make sure that his heart rate's not going above 130 as well. I want to make sure he's not becoming orthostatic, or his systolic blood pressure is not going below 90 or 200 or greater than 200. I want to make sure that his mean arterial pressure is not going less than 65 or greater than 110. I want to make sure his O2 sat is not going below 90%. And I just want to make sure that his vitals are progressing in a linear fashion. So if his heart rate's going up, I want to make sure his systolic blood pressure is going up, his diastolic blood pressure staying, pretty much stable, and, his O2 stat's not decreasing too low. If they meet any of those numbers before, then I would terminate the exercise. Another reason to terminate would be if he starts to begin to lose consciousness or fatigues too much. If he's not able to communicate with me, then, I'm going to want to come back later or come back another day and try and do some more interventions with him at another time.